A $600 million yacht, a mansion in London's Billionaire's Row, and a $300 million private jet. That's how Russian oligarchs lived before the war, and global sanctions turned their world upside down. These are the Russian oligarchs fighting to keep their wealth in 2024. After the Soviet Union fell in 1991, Russia found itself in complete chaos. The government, under President Boris Yeltsin, had no clear roadmap for transforming from a state-controlled economy into a market economy. In a desperate bid to revive the economy, Yeltsin's administration introduced a rapid privatization program that would forever change Russia's power structure. This move opened the door for a few smart, well-connected businessmen to seize enormous wealth by buying state assets at bargain prices. These men would come to be known as the oligarchs. Russia's transition from communism to capitalism was anything but smooth. Yeltsin's team, with advice from Western economists, implemented shock therapy, a strategy meant to move Russia quickly into a free market economy. Prices were deregulated, and state assets were sold off fast through a system of vouchers meant to ensure equal distribution of wealth. But in reality, the system backfired. As the Soviet Union crumbled, many Russians found themselves in poverty, struggling to make sense of the new economy. This turmoil created the perfect opportunity for a small group of ambitious businessmen. These men had been part of the underground black market during the final years of the Soviet Union and understood how to exploit the chaotic situation to their advantage. They bought up privatization vouchers from struggling citizens for pennies on the dollar. Armed with these vouchers, they acquired large shares of state-owned enterprises, including oil, gas, metals, and other natural resources. While the initial wave of privatization was somewhat chaotic, the real windfall came with the introduction of the loans for shares to be repaid. As a result, oligarchs like Roman Abramovich, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, and Boris Berezovsky were able to acquire controlling stakes in Russia's largest and most valuable enterprises, including oil companies like Yukos and Sibneft, for a fraction of their true worth. Roman Abramovich, for instance, bought the oil company Sibneft for a fraction of its real value, turning it into a gold mine. He later sold it back to the Russian government for billions. Meanwhile, Boris Berezovsky gained control of large sectors of the media industry, allowing him to influence public opinion while cementing his role as one of Russia's most powerful men. Roman Abramovich and Boris Berezovsky quickly became two of the most prominent faces of this new class of oligarchs. Abramovich, a man of humble beginnings, understood the value of connections. He forged strong ties with Boris Yeltsin's family and Vladimir Putin, a move that would secure his place in Russia's inner circle of power. His close relationship with Putin would later protect him when other oligarchs were being targeted. Berezovsky, on the other hand, was a mathematician turned businessman with a knack for media manipulation. He used his wealth and media holdings to support Yeltsin's re-election in 1996, further solidifying his power. With his growing influence, Berezovsky became a key political figure, playing a role in Putin's rise to power. As these are maintaining their wealth and staying in favor with the Russian government, particularly Vladimir Putin, depend on their relationship with the political elite. When Vladimir Putin came to power in 1999, he inherited a Russia where oligarchs held enormous power. These wealthy businessmen had taken control of key industries like oil, gas, and metals during the chaotic privatization of the 1990s. By the time Putin stepped in, the oligarchs essentially controlled large swathes of the Russian economy. However, Putin was quick to send a clear message. They could keep their wealth, but only if they remained loyal to him and the state. One of Putin's earliest moves was to crack down on those oligarchs who he believed posed a threat to his control. One of the most famous cases was that of Mikhail Khodorkovsky, once the richest man in Russia and the owner of the oil giant Yukos. Khodorkovsky, unlike some of his peers, began to challenge Putin's authority, but a step too far for Putin. In 2003, influence is only as strong as their relationship with the Russian government. Roman Abramovich, for example, built his empire on his close ties to both Boris Yeltsin and later Vladimir Putin. Abramovich was smart enough to keep a low profile in terms of politics, avoiding any direct challenge to the Kremlin. His reward was continued access to wealth and power. Others, like Alisher Usmanov, have also managed to maintain their wealth by aligning themselves with the Kremlin. Usmanov, who made his fortune in mining and investments, has never publicly opposed Putin. In fact, he has often spoken in favor of the government's policies and has maintained a close relationship with the state. This loyalty has allowed him to keep his vast wealth, including his super yacht Dilbar and his estate across Europe. Oligarchs in Russia don't just accumulate wealth for themselves, they also play a crucial role in maintaining the stability of the state. Many of these billionaires control vital industries, such as energy, banking, and telecommunications. Their companies provide the Kremlin with both revenue and influence over the economy. In return, the state protects their interests, as long as they remain loyal. Take Igor Sechin, for instance. Sechin is the head of Rosneft, Russia's state-owned oil company, and is often considered one of Putin's closest allies. His power goes beyond business, as he has played a key role in shaping Russian energy policy. His loyalty to Putin has allowed him to maintain his position, even as Western sanctions have hit Russia's economy. Similarly, Vladimir Putin, another powerful oligarch, has benefited from his close ties to the Kremlin. Putin controls Norilsk Nickel, the world's largest producer of nickel and palladium. Despite various economic challenges, his position has remained secure thanks to his alignment with Putin's government. However, loyalty to the Kremlin isn't always a straightforward path. Many oligarchs live in a state of constant fear. One misstep, one sign of disloyalty, and their entire empire could crumble. This reality has created a dark and messy web of power politics in Russia, where trust is fleeting and allegiances can shift quickly. In some cases, oligarchs are forced to take part in covert government operations to serve the Kremlin in ways that go beyond business. The line between state affairs and personal business becomes blurred, with oligarchs often playing a key role in international dealings. Those who fall out of favor or fail to meet the expectations of the Kremlin often face swift and brutal consequences. Like those who keep close to the Kremlin enjoyed immense rewards. Today's Russian oligarchs areas of the world, from the glitzy shores of Monaco to the quiet hills of Surrey, their assets reflect their extraordinary wealth and power. Brett. When we think about oligarchs, a few names instantly come to mind. Roman Abramovich, Alisher Usmanov, and Suleiman Kerimov. These men are the epitome of Russian elite wealth, owning assets that most people can only dream of. Roman Abramovich, perhaps the most well-known oligarch, has made his fortune through oil and industry. For years, he enjoyed a life filled with luxuries, from his football club to his super yacht, Eclipse. The Eclipse isn't just any yacht, it's one of the largest in the world, boasting 2 helipads, a swimming pool, a mini submarine, and even missile detection systems. This 533-foot vessel, worth over $600 million, is a symbol of Abramovich's incredible wealth. He also owns a variety of other properties, including a $150 million mansion in London's prestigious Kensington Palace Gardens, which is sometimes called Billionaire Row. Not to be outdone, Alisher Usmanov, a mining and steel mogul, owns the super yacht Dilbar. The Dilbar is even more valuable than Abramovich's Eclipse, with an estimated worth of $800 million. It's one of the largest yachts in the world, both in terms of length and volume. Usmanov also owns sprawling estates across Europe, including a large mansion in Surrey, England, valued at tens of millions. Another key player in this elite circle is Suleiman Kerimov. Kerimov's fortune comes from gold mining, and like his peers, he enjoys a life of luxury. His yacht, Amedia, was seized by US authorities in Fiji. The Amedia, worth over $300 million, had been a symbol of his immense wealth and was outfitted with every imaginable comfort. But that's just a fraction of his assets. Like many oligarchs, Kerimov has homes across the world, including properties in Russia, France, and beyond. Beyond yachts, oligarchs have a love for expensive homes. Many of them own massive estates in the UK, Europe, and Russia. Abramovich, for example, owns several homes, but his mansion in Kensington Palace Gardens stands out. This massive property, located in one of the most expensive streets in London, is worth over $150 million. It's close to many other embassies and properties owned by other billionaires. Alisher Usmanov, too, has his fair share of real estate. His home in Surrey, known as Sutton Palace, is a historic property with vast gardens and luxurious interiors. The mansion is estimated to be worth around $60 million. Usmanov also owns properties in Germany, Russia, and other parts of Europe. Meanwhile, Suleiman Kerimov owns multiple properties in France, including a grand mansion on the French Riviera. Like the other oligarchs, his homes are symbols of wealth, power, and influence. Yachts and mansions aren't the only luxuries these men enjoy. They also own fleets of private jets, allowing them to travel the world in style. Abramovich owns several jets, including a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner, which is valued at over $300 million. This private jet is customized with luxurious interiors and state-of-the-art technology.
Usmanov and Kerimov too have their own jets, which they use to hop between their properties, business meetings, and leisure destinations. These private planes give oligarchs the freedom to live and work anywhere in the world, flying from their homes in London or Monaco to business meetings in Moscow, all in a matter of hours. But while the oligarchs bask in their opulence, a much different reality exists for the average Russian. How does a nation react when its wealthiest live in excess, while so many struggle to make ends meet? The answer lies in a divide that has only grown deeper over the years. While a small group enjoys unimaginable wealth, many ordinary people struggle with low wages, poor infrastructure, and limited job opportunities. This sharp divide has led to a complex relationship between the oligarchs and the public, one filled with mixed emotions, ranging from admiration to deep resentment. For some Russians, the oligarchs are symbols of success. These men took advantage of the economic collapse in the 1990s and turned it into an opportunity to build vast fortunes. Their luxurious lifestyles are often portrayed in the media with stories of yachts, private jets, and sprawling mansions, capturing public attention. For some, this kind of success represents what is possible in modern Russia. However, admiration for their wealth is often overshadowed by frustration. Many Russians feel that the oligarchs amassed their fortunes through unfair advantages, benefiting from corrupt practices and close ties to the Kremlin. The average citizen, by contrast, has struggled through economic hardships, and the wealth gap has only widened over the years. Nowhere is the divide between the rich and the rest more visible than in Moscow. The capital is home to some of the wealthiest people in the world, including many oligarchs who live in lavish estates. Moscow is filled with luxury cars, high-end boutiques, and million-dollar homes, making it clear where the country's wealth is concentrated. Meanwhile, life outside the capital tells a different story. In many smaller cities and rural areas, people live in far less fortunate circumstances. Roads are often in disrepair, hospitals are underfunded, and job opportunities are limited. For these Russians, the oligarchs' wealth seems distant and unreachable, creating a sense of frustration that their country's riches are enjoyed by only a select few. The media plays a significant role in shaping public perception of the oligarchs. Russian television and news outlets sometimes highlight their extravagant lifestyles, which can provoke a sense of injustice among ordinary citizens. Stories of Roman Abramovich's yachts or Alisher Usmanov's luxurious homes are often met with criticism. Many Russians feel that the oligarchs have gained too much power and wealth, while contributing little to the well-being of the country's general population. There have also been moments where the public's frustration has boiled over. Protests in recent years, including those against government corruption, have sometimes targeted the close relationship between the oligarchs and the Kremlin. The idea that these billionaires are propped up by the state, while ordinary Russians face economic challenges, has become a common theme in discussing about inequality in the country. One of the main sources of resentment towards the oligarchs is the belief that they became rich through corrupt means. Many Russians see the oligarchs as benefiting from their close ties to the government, using their influence to gain access to valuable state assets during the privatization of the 1990s. The fact that much of their wealth comes from industries like oil, gas, and mining, natural resources that belong to the country, only adds to the frustration. This feeling of unfairness is compounded by the oligarchs' tendency to keep their wealth abroad. Instead of investing in Russia and improving the lives of their fellow citizens, many oligarchs choose to buy homes in London, France, or Monaco, fueling the belief that they care more about their own fortunes than the well-being of their country. As frustration builds within Russia, the global stage is heating up. Foreign governments are now zeroing in on the oligarchs' empires. With sanctions tightening, the question looms: how long can their fortunes remain untouched in a world determined to bring them down? Since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Western nations have responded by imposing sweeping sanctions on the country's elite, especially targeting the oligarchs who are closely tied to President Vladimir Putin. These global sanctions are designed to cripple the economic power of these billionaires, cutting them off from their luxurious lifestyles and weakening their influence over Russia's political and economic landscape. As a result, yachts have been seized, luxury homes frozen, and bank accounts locked. For oligarchs who once moved freely across the globe, their assets are now being hunted down and taken away. Sanctions against Russian oligarchs are not just about punishing wealthy individuals. They are part of a larger strategy to isolate Russia economically and diplomatically. By hitting the wealthiest and most
Influential people in Russia, the aim is to indirectly weaken Putin's regime. Oligarchs, after all, control key sectors of the Russian economy, including energy, mining, and banking. Their financial support and loyalty have been crucial to Putin's hold on power. The first round of sanctions, introduced shortly after the invasion on February 2022, focused on freezing the assets of oligarchs known for their close ties to the Kremlin. This included Roman Abramovich, Alisher Usmanov, and Igor Sechin, among others. Their yachts, mansions, and private jets became immediate targets. For these oligarchs, their vast wealth has always been a symbol of their influence. But now, it is also their greatest vulnerability. Yachts have been some of the most high-profile assets targeted by global sanctions. Roman Abramovich's Eclipse, one of the largest and most expensive yachts in the world, became a focal point of media attention. Worth over $600 million, the Eclipse is more than just a boat. It's a symbol of Abramovich's incredible wealth and status. Suleiman Kerimov's Amedia, a $300 million yacht, was seized in Fiji by the US government. This seizure made headlines as one of the most significant actions against a Russian oligarch's assets. Similarly, Igor Sechin's $120 million yacht, Crescent, was seized in Spain, and Alisher Usmanov's Dilbar, one of the largest yachts in the world, was detained in Germany. Each of these seizures represents a blow not only to the individual oligarchs, but also to the wider network of wealth and power that sustains Putin's regime. Luxury properties have also been targeted. Roman Abramovich, who owns properties across Europe and the United States, has seen many of his homes frozen by government authorities. His mansion in Kensington Palace Gardens, one of the most expensive properties in London, is now under government scrutiny. Other oligarchs have faced similar actions. Alisher Usmanov's estate in Surrey, England, worth millions, is no longer accessible to him as sanctions bite harder. In Monaco, a hotspot for Russian billionaires, properties owned by oligarchs have been frozen. These homes, often worth tens of millions of dollars, have long been seen as status symbols. Now they are symbols of a shifting power dynamic, as Western nations attempt to put pressure on the Russian elite by taking away their luxurious assets. Beyond yachts and mansions, the sanctions have hit oligarchs where it hurts the most: their businesses. Many of Russia's wealthiest men own stakes in companies that are crucial to the country's economy. Igor Sechin, who leads the oil giant Rosneft, has been hit hard by sanctions targeting the energy sector. Rosneft is one of Russia's largest and most important companies, and the sanctions on Sechin have created significant challenges for the business. Oleg Deripaska, another prominent oligarch, has faced sanctions on his aluminium business. Deripaska, who once had a major stake in Rusal, the world's second-largest aluminium producer, has seen his international business dealings frozen. His properties in London and his US assets have also been targeted, further limiting his ability to operate outside of Russia. The sanctions have had a ripple effect across the global economy. As oligarchs lose access to their wealth and assets abroad, they are becoming increasingly isolated. Many have been forced to sell off their stakes in Western companies, withdraw from international markets, and retreat to Russia. For example, Roman Abramovich was forced to sell Chelsea Football Club, a prized asset that had cemented his status in the UK, after being sanctioned by the British government. Despite the heavy sanctions and asset seizures, Russian oligarchs have shown they are good at staying one step ahead. They've developed ways to protect their fortunes, using tricks like hiding assets, moving money to family members, and finding safer places to do business. For these billionaires, it's all about staying in the game and keeping their influence intact, even as governments try to clamp down. One of the most common tactics oligarchs use to shield their wealth is by using offshore accounts and shell companies. These accounts are often opened in places like Cyprus or Switzerland, where banking laws are looser and it's easier to hide money. By moving their funds to these countries, oligarchs made it hard for governments to track down their wealth. Shell companies are businesses that only exist on paper. These companies allow oligarchs to this web of financial trickery helps them stay one step ahead, even as sanctions get stricter. Another way oligarchs protect their fortunes is by transferring wealth to family members. If a yacht, mansion, or business is under the name of a son or daughter, it's much harder for governments to seize it. Some oligarchs have handed over their companies and properties to trusted relatives to avoid losing them to sanctions. By doing this, they continue to control their assets without risking direct ownership. In this way, the wealth stays in the family while avoiding being caught in the sanction traps. This tactic has proven effective in keeping oligarchs one step ahead of the law. As Western sanctions continue to tighten, many oligarchs are looking for safer markets outside of Europe and the US. Countries like China, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates have become popular spots for them to move their money. These countries either don't follow the Western sanctions or offer a friendly business environment for Russian billionaires. For instance, Dubai's real estate market has become a hot destination for Russian wealth. Many oligarchs are buying expensive properties there, as the UAE has not imposed the same restrictions as Europe or the US. With countries like China and the UAE offering business opportunities without the threat of sanctions, oligarchs have found new places to secure their fortunes. As traditional banking systems become more difficult for them to access, some oligarchs are turning to cryptocurrency to move their money. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin offer an alternative that is harder to trace and control by governments. While digital currencies aren't completely safe from scrutiny, they provide oligarchs with a way to continue moving wealth across borders without relying on traditional banks. Cryptocurrency exchanges are also becoming popular in countries that don't follow Western sanctions. By investing in digital currencies, oligarchs can keep their wealth mobile and out of reach from governments looking to freeze their assets. In addition to financial tricks, oligarchs often rely on their political connections to protect their fortunes. In Russia, many oligarchs have close ties to the Kremlin, and these relationships help shield them from domestic threats. But it's not just inside Russia. Oligarchs have built connections in other countries too. They invest in foreign businesses and make donations to political causes to gain influence and secure protection abroad. These relationships can act as a buffer against sanctions. For example, in countries where they've invested heavily in real estate or businesses, local governments may be less willing to take action against them. This strategy allows oligarchs to maintain control over their assets, even as Western countries try to cut off their access. But even the most strategic alliances and investments can't shield them from every blow. As recent events show, the walls are closing in on Russia's wealthiest, and their options are running out. As of September 2024, the once untouchable Russian oligarchs are facing significant challenges. The ongoing war in Ukraine and global sanctions have left them in a precarious position. Recent court rulings in Europe dealt yet another blow to two of the country's wealthiest and most influential men, Gennady Timchenko and Mikhail Friedman. Both oligarchs, along with Russia's National Settlement Depository, tried to overturn the sanctions imposed on them by the European Union. They argued that the sanctions unfairly targeted their assets and restricted their financial activities. However, the EU's General Court dismissed their case, making a huge setback for these billionaires. The EU has been steadily increasing pressure on Russia since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. These sanctions are designed to choke the flow of money and resources that support the Russian war effort. For oligarchs like Timchenko and Friedman, who are deeply connected to Russia's economy and politics, the impact has been profound. The sanctions not only freeze their assets in Europe, but also restrict their ability to engage in trade and financial operations. Despite their wealth and power, even these oligarchs are struggling to navigate the restrictions that now shape their everyday lives. Timchenko, a longtime ally of President Vladimir Putin, has seen much of his fortune tied up in these sanctions. As a key feature in Russia's energy sector, he once controlled massive wealth through his involvement in oil and gas. But with European and US sanctions targeting key industries like energy, his business have taken a huge hit. Similarly, Mikhail Friedman, another billionaire who amassed his wealth through banking and retail, found himself under immense financial pressure. His appeal to lift sanctions was an attempt to regain access to his assets, but the court ruling has kept his funds frozen. For years, oligarchs like Timchenko and Friedman lived in a world where money and influence seemed to make anything possible. They owned sprawling properties in London, yachts docked in Monaco, and enjoyed the ability to move freely across Europe. But now,
their world is shrinking. With travel bans, asset freezes, and the constant scrutiny of international authorities, their once lavish lifestyles have been severely limited. Even though they remain billionaires on paper, much of their wealth is tied up in frozen assets they can no longer access. Despite these setbacks, Russian oligarchs aren't giving up easily. They continue to use legal challenges, lobbying efforts, and financial maneuvers to try and lift sanctions or minimize their impact. However, the recent ruling shows that Europe is committed to holding these figures accountable. The EU's General Court justified the sanctions by saying they are necessary to prevent the oligarchs from using legal and financial loopholes to bypass restrictions. This means that the oligarchs will have to keep